This story centers in a small village where farming was the source of living for most people. In this village lived Lamin and Sori, who relied on growing crops. Lamin and Sori knew each other, but they were nothing more than a nod in passing. The small population of the village meant that local farmers often found themselves with surplus crops. Farmers struggled to find buyers and harvests were unstable through the seasons. They longed to sign contracts with investors that usually show up every few years. Then one day, investors arrived in a nearby town seeking crops to buy. Farmers flocked to the town, hoping to secure contracts. The competition was fierce, and not everyone would succeed. Tension mounted between people. At the end of the second day, Lamin spotted Sori at a distance and called out to him. They huddled in the shade of a tree. "We must try and secure a contract this year," Sori said. Lamin nodded. "I agree, my brother." Desperate, Sori proposed a plan to increase their chances. They struck a pact that they would bid separately for as many contracts, but anyone who wins will share the contract with the other. One person will supply for one harvest, and the other will take over for the next, and then pass it back. Lamin thought it was a brilliant idea, and so he agreed. The two men shook on it. They continued to bid over the following days, and they eventually won one contract. Lamin made the first supply and reveled in his success. Sori waited patiently for his turn and continued working on his farm. As the rain ceased and the second harvest approached, something changed. Sori noticed Lamin withdrawing. Having tasted sweetness, Lamin renewed the contract without Sori's knowledge and did not pass the contract over as agreed. When Sori found out, he was furious and confronted Lamin, who showed no remorse. "I have decided to continue. The investors appreciated my crops and I don't want to jeopardize such good opportunity," Lamin said. Sori's heart sank. "But what about our agreement, Lamin? What am I going to tell my family?" Lamin shrugged. Hardened by greed, he replied, "The deal is done. Not much I can do about this now." Sori retreated to the fields. Tears blurred his vision as he stared into space. That evening, Sori told his family. They advised that he speak to elders who Lamin would listen to. They attempted to reason with Lamin, but he would not listen. At the end of the meeting, one elder stood up and said to Sori, "Don't be discouraged. Lamin has only showed his true character." Sori nodded and left, his heart hardened by betrayal. As the village slept that night, Sori told his wife he was going to check on his traps in the fields. The next morning, neighbors were woken by a chilling scream coming from the fields. The village buzzed with anticipation, and a crowd gathered. They sighted Lamin carrying a child in his arms. He dropped to his knees and sobbed as he explained. People ran to his aid and took the child from him. Sori, witnessing this, quietly tried leading his family away. But he was quickly seized and dragged back to face the crowd. Lamin watched on as they tortured him. So what happened? When Sori went to the fields that night, he went to Lamin's farm and tampered with the cup Lamin usually drank from. But the next morning, Lamin's child was first to drink from the cup, and not the father. Days passed, and the child began to recover. Sori was eventually released. Lamin was advised to honor the agreement and return the contract. But the two men could no longer work together because trust had been lost. This story reminds us that we must be true to our words and keep our promises. If we are to succeed in life, our word is our bond and should be honored. In an ideal scenario, the sensible decision for Sori was to let go, believing that there would be other opportunities. What is for you will always find its path to you. The mind is like water. When it is turbulent, it is difficult to see. When it is calm, everything becomes clear. Reacting to situations with anger and frustration can hinder our ability to make sound decisions. Despite not intending to harm a child, Sori did, and carried the burden of the consequence of that decision.